Hello everyone. In this introduction to Unity video, we are going to take a look at the 4 different light types in a scene. Before we get into it, remember to subscribe to see more and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload. It really helps me out. Now, on with the show. So a default scene, when you create it in Unity, you'll be given one specific light, and that is a directional light. So we may as well look at that one first. So we can see here the light component contains all of these, and depending on what type you select, it does indeed change some of these options. Now, type, directional, we can see that we do have spot, point, and area. We'll go through these one by one. The color dictates the color of the light. By default, it is this very faint yellow. However, if we select it white, we can see it does very minimal changes on the objects. However, if we really change it to yellow, we can see just how much this does impact. And obviously we can change various settings here, and we can see that the color does indeed change depending on what we want. It's as simple as that. Color, it just dictates the color that the light will shine. Mode, we have mixed by default. We can change it to real time, or we can change it to baked. I suggest having it as mixed. The reason being is because it gives us the opportunity to create real-time shadows, as well as being able to bake, in some respect, some of the light. So we can change the intensity. Obviously 1 is fairly decent. However, we can really bump that up to have high intensity light. And the indirect multiplier isn't going to do too much in this instance because there's not a lot in the light with this particular area to be dealing with. So in simple terms, the indirect multiplier isn't going to do anything at this point in time. We can select different types of shadows. So we could have no shadows, which would eliminate a lot of those options. We could have hard shadows, and we could also have soft shadows. Now you may have noticed when we changed to soft shadows, this baked shadow angle appeared ungrayed out. This gives us the option to change the shadow angle. And obviously, once again, I think I said it in the last video, that if you hover over things, it will give you a brief description of what things do. So we can also change the real-time shadows strength to 1. If we change it to 0, we wouldn't have any shadows at all. Now, all of these options are pretty much the same as they would be in hard shadows, so hard or soft isn't going to matter too much. You just need to keep in mind that if you're starting to use things like very high resolution, that will impact your performance to a degree. It may be minimal impact, it may be maximum impact. It depends on your scene, its size, and how much you've got going on. So it may be best to use the quality settings. You can change the bias, normal bias, and near plane. And the near plane basically is a way of saying how far away a shadow can be rendered. When we come down to cookie and halos, obviously, depending on what type of game you're creating, you may want a cookie or halo. If you do, you can add the texture for the cookie here, its size, and you can also draw the halo. The same will apply for the flare here. You would just need to add it in there. The render mode can be used to render important, non-important, or automatic. Most of the time, auto will suffice. However, occasionally, depending on what your scene looks like, you may have a couple of walls that almost intersect, but the light doesn't quite work in the same way. You may need to change the rendering mode to important. So if you've got an issue with lighting in your scene, especially with a directional light, you may need to change the render mode to important. Finally, in this case, the culling mask. It allows us to eliminate certain layers which you don't want the light to impact. So, as an example, if we have a layer of water, and we don't want the light to impact that in any kind of way, we can deselect the water layer. So anything you set as a layer, you can actually change in the culling mask. So if we select it, we can see the list there. We have water that you could take away. So all of these options are somewhat standard. A directional light overall will illuminate the entire scene in one given direction. So in this case, we can see that directional light is pointing pretty much at a nice angle of, well, in this case, -30 and 50. And obviously we can change those, and you can see just how much the light impacts the various things around it. But either way, the directional light has illuminated the entire scene. So if I undo that now, if we change this to a spotlight, we can see that it works exactly as it says. It is indeed a spotlight, and we can see the spot of light right there. A couple of different options on the spotlight. We have the range, so we can see how far we want that spotlight to go out, and you can see these yellow lines depicting whereabouts that spotlight would land. We can also change the spot angle, so how wide we want that to be, and everything else is pretty much just the same as it would be on the directional light. This is quite useful to, for example, depict a certain position in your scene where you want the light to shine straight down. In this case, as we can see here, I have this light shining on that specific spot right there, and it's quite intense. The next light on our list is point. Point light will emit a light within a radius around itself that we can change here in the range. If we were to change this range to 1, we can see here that this is as far as the light will go. If we set it to 10, we can see that the range dramatically increases. So everything within this range here is where the point light will emit. The further out it is, the less likely the light will hit. So it kind of fades as it goes outwards. And once again, all of those other options are pretty much the same. Finally, we have area, and this is for baked light only. So if you're baking your light, you may want to have the area illuminated with the light. If not, I would suggest one of the other three. All options are generally the same with these, just a couple of different, specific, unique options for each light choice. So those are the 4 lights that you will more than likely use more than anything within your Unity scene. Remember that a directional light will illuminate the entire scene in one specific direction. A spotlight will illuminate a spot wherever you point it to, and point will illuminate a given area around itself. Finally, the area one will only work if you have baked your light. I hope that helps you, and I'm sure if you have any comments, you can leave them below, and I will do my best to answer them. Hopefully I will see you in the next video. I do appreciate you watching. Thank you.